Welcome back. The state Senate back on the floor this week for the last time this session.
Among the likely actions, several bills meant to address an alarming number of threats targeting judges. The Supreme Court Marshal's Office says in 2023, it documented 142 threats against judges and justices in Wisconsin, 44 of which were direct threats of physical harm or violence. June 3rd, 2022, in the township of New Lisbon.
RP states his neighbor's son from across the street is banging on the door stating that someone murdered his father.
The targeted murder of retired Wisconsin Judge John Romer, who law enforcement sources say was zip-tied and shot to death. The suspect, who later died after a self-inflicted gunshot wound, 56-year-old Douglas Udy, Romer sentenced to 6 years in prison in 2005. You knew Judge Romer?
I knew him well. He was a very good human being, a very kind, thoughtful, soft-spoken man who would have been the last individual that you would have suspected would be victimized by the type of behavior that ultimately took his life. That moment, we all knew it was in all likelihood because he had been a judge from the intelligence that had been provided to us. And I think all of us, when we confronted what had happened to him, were initially just taken back by the loss of a really good human being, and then we started to reflect on ourselves.
That reflection has led to legislation on the verge of passing the state Senate this week and on to Governor Tony Evers. The bills would allow judges to shield their personal information and that of their immediate family, including their addresses, from public search results and in state election filings. The legislation would also increase penalties for protesting outside a judge's home in an attempt to influence a case. How widespread are these threats and fears from the judicial branch?
I think that you would be hard-pressed to find anybody involved in the third branch who hasn't experienced some type of threat or multiple threats in some way over the course of the last 5 years.
Waushara County Judge Guy Dutcher testified last month in Madison about the threats he's received, including potentially the most serious in 2015.
The individual ultimately broke that surveillance, was screaming toward the courthouse at over 100 miles an hour, driving a vehicle that had puncture-proof tires. The person was mentally ill. I did not even recall the name of the person, having dealt with them approximately 4 or 5 years before, not having been involved with them in a way where I would have thought that they would have been upset to the point where they were intending to do something. And the person had made commentary about his intentions and was actually coming to the courthouse, we believe, armed with a shotgun, to take the life of the district attorney and of myself. And I was sitting in my office with an officer on either side of me with a fully automatic weapon, hearing the sirens that were screaming as the officers were intercepting him, coming at a high rate of speed to the courthouse, thinking I really hadn't contemplated this as being part of the job description.
Have you and other judges across the state changed in recent years how you live your life?
You take steps to live your life in as different a way as you can while still living your life. You're conscious of routes that you take to work or take home from work. You're conscious of where you park.
Wisconsin Supreme Court Chief Justice Annette Ziegler, who is backing this legislation, has made judicial safety a cornerstone of her work, including pressuring lawmakers for more resources.
We have to be vigilant at all times, and we need to enhance judicial security. My vision would be that we have a robust security infrastructure that includes excellent training for judges, court staff, added protection for members of the public who come to our courthouses, that we have well-equipped security personnel, increased physical and technological safety measures, so that we have continually monitored internet surveillance in an effort to avoid and also detect problems and threats before they occur.
Do you think politics has a role in it at all?
I think it does. I think there's an ideological component to this, although the circumstances that we're discussing involve people across the spectrum of ideology. Irrespective of where one falls in that regard, you have pockets of dissatisfaction that feel entitled and empowered to express themselves against those with whom they disagree, ideologically or otherwise.
If the governor signs these bills into law, your reaction will be?
I will applaud the legislature and the governor for taking a significant step in recognizing the vulnerability, in particular, of the decision makers in the third branch of government. But I would caution them to feeling that they've addressed the issue to the extent that it needs to be addressed. Much more still needs to be done.
The Senate on the floor this week.
Up next, it's Oscar Sunday, the push to bring movie productions to Wisconsin. John Ridley, the Academy Award-winning screenwriter and director from Milwaukee, is here next.